In the introduction to our campaign unit, and especially in our focus on elaboration likelihood modeling, we spent a considerable amount of time talking about the way that attitudes influence individuals' actions and beliefs. In this sense, we talked about the way that attitudes link to motivations. In the context of elaboration, we talked about individuals who are highly motivated are more highly likely to elaborate. And so in that sense, motivation and elaboration have a certain moderating effect on one another. It might be important as we think about health communication to think about what motivates audiences to attend to a message and what motivates audiences to change following that message. There are a few principal factors of motivation that scientists of communication and persuasion have identified that I think we can point to here for some help. The first is to note that individuals like being part of a group. This certainly relates back to social identity theory and some of the concepts that were developed therein. But secondly, individuals like the appreciation and acknowledgement of others. We like doing what is supported and known by others, and so we might think about the need to wash our hands as a public necessity and something we do both because it's important we do individually, but also we would appreciate if others did it as well. Third, we might note that individuals like to know that we can, in some responsibility, link to or have associations to control other people's actions, and that we are part of a network, we're part of a group, and so we all ascribe to certain behaviors, in that sense, controlling each other's actions. Fourth, individuals might choose to do something simply because it's amusing or entertaining. Perhaps you can relate back to the Ice Bucket Challenge, a public health campaign of its own that many individuals chose to take up, partially because it was amusing, it was entertaining, and it allowed for some virality or shareability on places like social media. Fifth, individuals often ascribe to various different forms of public health campaigns or other campaigns simply because they allow a certain form of escape from reality and provide a distraction from the everyday routine or banality and boredom of life. And finally, it provides some relaxing or opportunity to relieve stress. Many times, health campaigns directly implicate the opportunity to relieve stress by saying that by following the campaign, exercising and eating right, you'll truly have reduced stress. But also, the idea is if you are doing those things and following those campaigns, you get a sense of completion, perhaps a sense of reduced cognitive dissonance, and in that sense, reduced stress. So now that we've identified some barriers to health communication, some reasons why we should seek to overcome those barriers, and some spaces and places in which we might make action areas or inroads to improve health communication, we should ask ourselves what the outcome or goal of improved health communication is. It's important to note that the end goal of improved health communication isn't simply getting the diagnosis or recommendation and treatment correct. It's also building a relationship between patient and provider that leads to a long-term relationship and encourages that patient to get preventative medicine sooner than that last-minute need for an emergency relief. In this sense, it's about reflecting cultural values and building relationships that are predicated on effective health communication. Indeed, communication scholars who perform trainings for health communication practitioners have performed follow-up research to demonstrate that their trainings have been quite helpful. Research has demonstrated that various different forms of health communication training can help providers sharpen their communication skills, better encourage patients to ask questions or otherwise perform follow-up behaviors, encourage patients and providers to stay on topic and perform conversations that lead to better health outcomes, help providers express genuine concern and respect for patient safety, health, or otherwise improving their conditions. And, most fundamentally, research demonstrates time after time that health communication trainings can improve patient outcomes in the sense that it fosters more effective treatments. Many health communication campaigns seek to create community dialogue. When we talk about community dialogue, we're talking about a process in which a wide membership of stakeholders is brought into an issue discussion to better be able to talk about issues of public health that affect and concern them. Perhaps you're familiar with the Flint water crisis. In Flint, lead poisoning leaked into the water supply through old sewer pipes and water pipes that then caused a serious rate of cancer and environmental damage to happen to the individuals who lived in that community. As individuals organized to demand for their right for clean water, we saw community dialogue in action. And so community dialogues are processes in which individuals are made aware of the health communication effects around them and then brought to action or mobilized to create change as a result. In this sense, community dialogue is a form of public communication. However, it relies on the principles of interpersonal communication to build its network and create relationships between stakeholders, investors, and those who are otherwise affected by the areas of environmental and public health concerns. The final interpersonal dynamic we'll talk about in the context of health communication campaigns today is personal selling. When we talk about personal selling, we're talking about the one-on-one engagement with customers or special groups. In the healthcare industry, this is pretty common, and perhaps the best example is pharmaceutical representatives who offer guidance to physicians about which pills or which different prescriptions they should give to their patients. One important thing to note about personal selling is that it doesn't work in a vacuum, and it's often coupled with other channels of communication. You might think about the way that political communication campaigns work through a number of different channels strategically. Similarly, health communication campaigns often use a number of different interpersonal channels, including personal selling, community dialogue, or other forms of mobilizing and engaging their audience. It's also important to note that in the context of personal selling, it requires a supportive environment or an engaged, highly motivated, or highly likely to elaborate audience. In this sense, it requires people who are willing to listen and who are otherwise interested in the product that you're describing. The final thing to note about personal selling is that it requires a particular skill set. It requires training and practice, a particular set of communication skills that allow you to both know about the product and share that product information effectively, but also to ethically respond to any objections or arguments made against your position. In this sense, my hope is a class like this has prepared you well to be able to take a career position like this if it were in your path.